In the heart of a wealthy African city where skyscrapers kissed the sky and luxury cars lined the streets, lived a woman named Madame Nana. People knew her as the widow of the great businessman, Chief Odam, a man who built an empire with sweat, wisdom, and steel nerves. After his passing, the company was left in the hands of his only son, Kwame, but the true power still rested in Madame Nana's silent, watchful gaze. To the outside world, Madame Nana had everything: wealth, respect, legacy. But one thing kept her up at night: her son's future wife. Kwame was returning from abroad after completing his education. He had grown into a tall, cultured, sharply dressed man, polite, intelligent, and now set to take over his father's empire. But rich men attracted the wrong kind of women. Madame Nana had seen it too many times. Girls who dressed like goddesses, but had hearts colder than iron. They smiled sweetly, giggled prettily, but behind their mascara and lip gloss was greed. Pure, dangerous greed. She couldn't let her son fall into that trap. So she made a bold decision. She would go undercover. Not as a board member, not as the CEO's mother, but as a cleaner, a nobody, an old woman mopping floors. That way she could observe, not from a golden throne, but from the dust where true hearts were revealed. On a Monday morning just after sunrise, Madame Nana wrapped herself in an old faded wrapper, threw on a shapeless blouse, tied a scarf loosely around her head, and stepped into the office holding a plastic mop and a battered bucket. Gone was the regal woman people bowed to. She looked tired, invisible, unimportant. As she walked into the office lobby, the buzzing chatter paused. "You," said a voice laced with disgust. "Who let the village woman in here?" It was Linda, one of the stylish office girls. She smirked as her friend Anita added, "Maybe she got lost on the way to the market." Laughter followed, loud, cruel, empty. Madame Nana said nothing. She lowered her eyes and began mopping the marble floor. Her back ached, her pride screamed, but she endured. She wasn't here to be honored, she was here to observe. Among the group of girls snickering, one young woman didn't join the chorus. Wendy. She sat at her desk, quietly typing, unfazed by the scene around her. She didn't pity the cleaner, she simply treated her like a human being. That was the first sign. Over the next few days, Madame Nana became a silent fixture in the office. She watched, she listened. She saw how Anita and Linda flung insults and rolled their eyes whenever she passed. They mocked her clothes, her smell, her age. But Wendy never joined them. In fact, when Madame Nana tripped one afternoon and fell hard on the floor, soaking her clothes in dirty water, the entire office laughed, except Wendy. She rushed over, helped her up gently and whispered, "Are you okay, Mama?" Mama. That one word hit Madame Nana harder than the fall. She hadn't been called that with love since her husband died. She looked into Wendy's eyes and saw something she hadn't seen in years, kindness that didn't expect a reward. That evening, while wiping the break room table, Madame Nana made her next move. She brought food, not the catered fancy meals Anita bragged about, but a simple home-cooked groundnut soup with fufu, the kind that fed souls, not just stomachs. Predictably, Linda scrunched her nose. "Ugh, what's that smell?" "Local. Food," Anita said mockingly. "Smells like poverty." Madame Nana ignored them and ate quietly. Then Wendy entered, paused, and smiled. "Good afternoon, Mama," she greeted warmly. She sat beside her, opened her small container of Yolof, Reese, and after a moment asked, "Did you cook that yourself?" "Yes," Madame Nana said. "Would you like to try some?" Without hesitation, Wendy took a spoonful. The others gasped in disbelief, as if she had committed a sin. But Wendy just smiled and said, "This tastes like home." Madame Nana felt her chest tighten. This girl was different, And in that moment she knew, if her son ever met Wendy, it would not be a mistake. But the other girls, they had seen the kindness between the cleaner and the junior staff. And their jealousy had only just begun to boil. The next morning the office felt different. The tension in the air was almost touchable, like walking into a room full of fake smiles and hidden daggers. Madame Nana returned in her disguise. As usual, faded wrapper, worn slippers, mop in hand. But today her eyes were sharper. She had sensed it. Something was coming. As she scrubbed the tiles near the hallway, she heard whispers behind her. Laughter. Then, splash! Water suddenly spilled across the floor. Her bucket had been tipped over, not by accident. "Oh no," came Anita's sugary sweet voice. "The poor old woman can't even hold a bucket," Linda added with a giggle. "Maybe she's blind too, or maybe her village hands are just weak." Before Madame Nana could react, Anita shoved her, not hard, but hard enough. She lost balance and fell to the floor with a thud. Her bones rattled, and the cold tiles sent a jolt up her spine. Her cleaning rag splashed into the soapy water and stuck to her cheek. Laughter exploded from the girls. Real, cruel, heartless laughter. But like a warm light in the middle of a storm, Wendy appeared. She rushed to Madame Nana's side, ignoring the stares, the mocking, the snide comments. "Mama, are you okay?" she asked, kneeling, her hands shaking as she tried to lift the older woman up. Wendy wasn't strong, but her determination was. Slowly, she helped Madame Nana to her feet, ignoring how wet her skirt got in the process. She grabbed tissues and wiped her face, her expression full of real concern. "Mama, this is too much. Are you sure you should be working like this?" Wendy whispered. "I'm fine, my daughter," Madame Nana replied softly, though her back ached and her pride was in pieces. Anita folded her arms, eyes burning with bitterness. "Seriously, Wendy? You want to be friends with the cleaner now? Maybe you can clean her house next," Linda chimed in, loud enough for the whole office to hear. Wendy stood up and turned slowly. "Maybe I will," she replied, voice calm but firm. "At least she has more dignity than most of you." The office fell silent. The slap wasn't physical, but it landed. Later that day, Madame Nana sat alone in the break room, her hands shaking as she stirred a small pot of soup she'd brought from home. She couldn't stop thinking about Wendy, her kindness, her courage, the way she stood up to Anita when others stayed quiet. She wasn't just a good person. She was strong. That evening, as the office emptied, Wendy stopped by the break room. Her lunchbox was empty, but she sat beside Madame Nana anyway. "I'm not very hungry," she said, "but I wanted to see if you were okay." Madame Nana smiled. "I am now." There was a pause. Then Wendy asked quietly, "Mama, may I join you for dinner one day? I'd like to learn how you make that groundnut soup." Madame Nana's heart swelled. "I'd be honored, my daughter." The next evening, Wendy stood outside a modest house on a quiet street. It wasn't big, but it was spotless, neat, humble, yet proud. She expected to see poverty, but what she saw was dignity. Inside, the house smelled of jollof rice, grilled fish, and warm spices. It was comforting, the kind of scent that wrapped itself around your heart. Wendy sat down with Madame Nana at a small wooden table. As they ate, they laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. They spoke about life, family, food, and dreams. Not once did Wendy ask about money. Not once did she act like she was better. That night, Madame Nana watched her carefully. She wasn't ready to reveal her secret yet, but she knew deep down, if Kwame met this girl, his heart would recognize what hers already had. But the world wasn't done testing Wendy. The next day, the office was abuzz with one word: Kwame. He was back, fresh from London, tall, handsome, dressed in a crisp navy suit. His walk said confidence. His silence said power. Every eye was on him. Every heart raced, especially Anita's and Linda's. He's even hotter than his pictures, Linda whispered. I swear I'm going to be his wife, Anita declared. Kwame, however, wasn't looking at anyone. His mind was focused on one thing, stepping into his father's shoes. But as he walked into the lobby, something caught his eye. An old cleaner was mopping the floor, bent and slow. He paused. Excuse me, Mama, he said gently. Why are you doing this alone? Where's the rest of the janitorial staff? Before Madame Nana could speak, Anita jumped in. Don't worry, sir, she cooed. She's just a cleaner. She's used to this. Kwame's expression darkened. Used to it, he repeated, voice cold. That doesn't mean she shouldn't. Be treated with respect. Anita blinked. Her charm had just bounced off steel. From across the room, Wendy watched silently. She had seen something rare, a rich man standing up for someone beneath him, and when Kwame's eyes met hers, just for a moment, something shifted in both of them. He didn't know her yet, but something about Wendy made him pause. And something about Madame Nana made him uneasy, like she wasn't who she seemed. By the time the lunch break rolled around, whispers were flying through the office like wildfire. Did you see the way Kwame looked at Wendy? Anita's gonna explode! She's already plotting something, I swear. Wendy heard it all but kept her head down. She didn't want attention, she didn't want drama, and she certainly wasn't chasing after the boss. But it didn't matter. The snakes were already moving. Anita sat in front of her mirror in the ladies' room, reapplying her ruby-red lipstick with the precision of a sniper. Linda leaned against the sink, scrolling through her phone, eyes narrowed. He looked at her, Anita muttered, through clenched teeth. Linda didn't answer right away. Then, casually, so what? It's just one look. Anita snapped the lipstick shut. That's all it takes. One look, one conversation, one spark. Linda looked up, finally curious. So what's the plan? Anita grinned. We'll make her disappear, nicely. That evening, Wendy received a strange text from an unknown number. Meet me tomorrow, 7 p.m, Grand Royal Hotel. Come alone. It's important. She showed the message to Madame Nana during dinner. The old woman's face tightened. This doesn't feel right, she said. You think it's Anita? Wendy asked. Madame Nana didn't answer directly. She just looked into Wendy's eyes and said, Be careful. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. But Wendy had never been one to run from confrontation. So the next night, dressed simply in jeans and a clean blouse, she walked into the Grand Royal Hotel with her head high. She spotted Anita. Almost immediately, sitting at a small table near the corner, sipping wine like she owned the world. Wendy sat down, calm. What do you want? Anita leaned forward, lowering her voice. Let me be real with you. You're in over your head. Wendy blinked. Excuse me. Kwame is not your level, Anita said sharply. You're a nobody. You take public transport, you pack rice in plastic bowls, you eat with cleaners. Wendy smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That cleaner has more class than anyone in that office. Anita's smile disappeared. She pulled a brown envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. Take this money, quit quietly, no drama, just disappear. Wendy stared at the envelope. She knew how much was inside, more than 3 months' salary, maybe more. Her mind raced. Her rent was overdue. Her younger brother needed school. Fees. Her mother's hospital bill was hanging over her like a curse. But then she looked at Anita and saw the fear in her eyes. That fear that someone like Wendy could rise without faking, lying, or selling herself. With a calm hand, Wendy pushed the envelope back. No, she said softly. You'll regret this, Anita hissed. No, Wendy stood. You will. As she walked away, she had no idea that someone was watching from the shadows. Madame Nana. She sat alone in the hotel's lounge, wearing dark sunglasses and sipping tea. She had heard everything, and her heart, once unsure, was now fully decided. Wendy was the one. But the snakes didn't stop. The next morning, Wendy walked into the office as usual, but something was different. The air felt heavy. People stared. Some whispered. Others giggled behind their hands. Then she saw Anita standing confidently in the middle of the room, holding her phone high. "Everyone," Anita said loudly, "you need to hear this." She pressed play on a voice recording, and suddenly Wendy's voice filled the office. "Kwame is already noticing me, and we both know it's just a matter of time." The crowd gasped. Anita paused the audio with a smug look. "Looks like someone isn't as humble as she acts." Laughter broke out. "Wow, pretending to be innocent while chasing the boss, that's rich. She's just like the rest of them, only faker." Wendy's throat went dry. That audio, it was real, but not the way they heard it. It had been twisted, edited, cut. She hadn't said those words like that, but how could she explain? Madame Nana stood in the hallway, watching with cold fury. The humiliation, the lies, the poison. This had gone far enough. Just then, the office door swung open. Kwame. He looked around, sensing something was wrong. The laughter died. Everyone pretended to work. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice cutting the silence like a blade. No one answered. Then his eyes found Wendy, her face pale, her shoulders trembling. Something inside him tightened. He turned to Anita. "My office. Now." Anita tried to laugh it off. "Sir, we were just having fun. Now." The word landed like a slap. Anita's face fell as she followed him into his office, the door slamming behind them. Wendy stood frozen, surrounded by eyes that once looked past her, now staring through her like she was dirt. But one thing they didn't know, the game had just changed, and Madame Nana was done watching. Inside his office, Kwame paced back and forth, his jaw clenched so tightly the veins in his neck showed. Anita stood near the door, pretending to be innocent, but her eyes darted nervously. "You embarrassed a staff member in front of the entire office," Kwame said sharply. "That's harassment." "Sir, I swear it was just a joke," Anita said with a forced smile. "Everyone was laughing. That doesn't make it right." "But Wendy, she's pretending to be something she's not." Anita's tone shifted. "She's manipulating people. She wants your attention." Kwame stopped. "Did she tell you that?" Anita blinked. "Well, not directly, but—" "Exactly," Kwame cut her off. "You made an assumption, then you turned it into a public circus. You should be ashamed." Her smile dropped. She had never seen him so cold, so unforgiving. As she stood there, humiliated, Kwame dismissed her with a wave of his hand. "You're lucky I don't fire you today. Get out." Anita's face turned red, but she stormed out silently. Outside the office, all eyes were on her now, but not with admiration or with judgment. Wendy sat quietly, pretending to focus on her screen, but her mind was racing. Kwame had defended her. Again. Why? That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the city gold, Wendy walked to Madame Nana's small home. She was tired, emotionally, drained, but she needed peace. "Mama," she greeted softly as she entered. "Come, sit," Madame Nana said, already serving hot jollof rice and spicy tilapia. The food smelled like home, like comfort. But as Wendy reached for her spoon, Madame Nana's hand rested gently on hers. "My daughter," she said, voice serious now. "I need to tell you something." Wendy looked up, confused. "I haven't been honest with you," Madame Nana continued. "I'm not just a cleaner." Wendy frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm the founder's wife, Kwame's mother." Silence. For a moment, Wendy couldn't even blink. Her spoon dropped into her bowl. "You... what?" "I disguised myself," Madame Nana said quietly, "to find out who among the women in the office was real, who had heart, who would treat others with dignity when they had nothing to gain. I didn't want my son to marry a woman who only saw the money. Wendy pulled her hand away slowly. Her heart thundered in her chest. So, all of this, you were testing me? I was watching you, Madame Nana admitted, and what I saw was honesty, kindness, courage. You defended me when others laughed. You helped me when I fell. You respected me when everyone else looked down on me. Tears welled in Wendy's eyes. Mama, I never did it for a test. I just thought you deserved kindness. I know, Madame Nana smiled gently, and that's why I chose you. Wendy shook her head. Mama, I'm not the one. I don't belong in your world. You're wrong, Madame Nana said firmly. Character doesn't come from where you live. It comes from how you live. As Wendy sat in stunned silence, her phone buzzed. It was Kwame. Can we talk? Just you and me. Tomorrow. Her hands trembled. That night, she barely slept. Her mind kept replaying everything, the fake audio, the bribe, the humiliation, and now, the truth about Madame Nana. The next day, Wendy walked into Kwame's office with her heart pounding. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking every bit like the powerful man he was. But when he turned and looked at her, his eyes weren't hard. They were searching. Wendy, he said, I owe you an apology. She opened her mouth to speak, but he continued. I believed what I heard. I shouldn't have, but I've been investigating and the audio was fake. The CCTV footage from that week, erased, and we traced it back to Anita's login credentials. Wendy gasped softly. Kwame stepped closer. I don't know how she did it, but I know one thing. You've done nothing wrong, and I'm sorry for doubting you. Wendy looked up, her eyes shimmering. Thank you. That means more than you know. There was a pause, a silence charged with something deeper. Then Kwame said quietly, My mother speaks highly of you. Wendy's eyes widened. You know? I do now. She told me everything. She couldn't help but smile. She's incredible. She is, Kwame nodded, and she believes you're special. Wendy's heart beat louder. Then Kwame said it, simple and sincere. And now I do too. Outside that office door, gossip still lived. Jealousy still breathed. But inside this moment, something honest had begun. And somewhere deep inside, Anita felt it. The walls were closing in, but she wasn't going down without a fight. Anita sat alone in her car, nails digging into the leather steering wheel as she stared blankly through the windshield. Her plan had failed. Not only had Kwame defended Wendy, but now Madame Nana had stepped into the light, and she had chosen her. Not Anita, not Linda, not any of the women who'd been in the company for years. Wendy, the soft-spoken junior staff girl who ate food from a cleaner's lunchbox. Rage bubbled in Anita's chest like acid. She had tried kindness, she had tried warnings, she had even tried money, but none of it worked. And now her humiliation was public. She wasn't going to let Wendy win. That night, she made a call. I need a favor, she said into the phone. Something dirty, no questions asked. A man's voice replied, How dirty? Anita's smile returned. Ruin her completely dirty. The next morning began with chaos. Wendy barely made it through the company doors when two uniformed officers entered behind her, heading straight for the front desk. Miss Wendy Mina? One of them called out. She turned slowly. Yes. You're under arrest for theft and corporate fraud. Gasps echoed across the office. Phones slipped from hands. Papers fluttered to the ground. Wendy froze. What? No, I didn't. Cold steel clicked around her wrists. I didn't do anything, she cried, tears welling up instantly. You have the wrong person. They didn't listen. Anita watched it all from her desk, sipping coffee like nothing was happening, though her eyes sparkled with quiet, cruel victory. As the police dragged Wendy away, her co-workers whispered like hyenas. I knew it. She was always pretending to be humble. She got greedy, just like the rest. And the boss? He must feel so embarrassed now. Wendy sat alone in a cold grey cell. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her mind raced. Who had done this? She had barely recovered from the last attack, and now she was facing criminal charges. There was no proof, no lawyer, just fear. But a few hours later, a guard appeared. "Someone paid your bail," he said. Wendy's heart leapt. "Who?" He shrugged. "She's waiting outside." As Wendy walked out of the station, her eyes scanned the waiting area. And then, relief. "Mama!" Madame Nana stood there, arms folded, eyes fierce. Wendy collapsed into her arms, crying. "I swear I didn't do it. I don't even know how—" "Hush, my daughter," Madame Nana whispered, holding her close. "I believe you. I know who's behind this." Back at the company, Kwame sat in stunned silence, staring at the news headline on his phone. Company scandal, staff member accused of embezzlement. Wendy's name was in bold. Her face was plastered underneath it. "No," he whispered. "Not again." He rushed down to the legal department, demanding a full audit. "Find every transfer, every signature, every login. I want it all." Behind the scenes, Anita was already celebrating with Linda. "She'll never survive this," Anita said smugly. "Even if she's innocent, her name is finished." Linda tried to smile, but her nerves showed. "Don't you think you're taking it too far now?" Anita's eyes flashed. "She tried to take everything from me. She doesn't deserve mercy." But what she didn't know was that the storm she'd started was about to spin out of her control. That night, back at Madame Nana's home, Wendy sat quietly holding a warm cup of tea. Her eyes were red, her voice tired. "They all believed it so quickly," she said, "like they were just waiting for me to fall." "People always envy what they can't be," Madame Nana replied softly. There was a knock at the door. Kwame. He looked exhausted. His tie was loose, his jaw tight. But when he saw Wendy, his eyes softened. "Come in," Madame Nana said firmly. "We need to talk." Kwame sat down, staring at Wendy. "I know you're innocent," he said. "We've already found the fake transaction trail, and it's not linked to your credentials. It was inserted manually into the system under a dummy profile." Wendy stared. "So, it was planted?" Kwame nodded. "Deliberately, and whoever did it was smart, but not smart enough." Madame Nana stepped forward. "I have one question," she said. "If you had never known who I really was, would you have still treated me the same?" Wendy didn't hesitate. "Yes, Mama. Always." That answer, simple and honest, was all Madame Nana needed to hear. The next morning, a bomb exploded. Not literal, but professional. Kwame called a full company assembly. Everyone gathered, staff, board members, even janitors. Then he stepped onto the stage, cleared his throat and said, "An investigation has revealed that one of our employees attempted to frame another through false financial charges. That employee is—" He looked straight at Anita. "Anita Mensah." The gasp was so loud it could have shattered glass. Anita's legs went weak. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kwame didn't stop. "She also doctored audio recordings, erased security footage, and attempted to bribe Miss Wendy Mina. She is hereby terminated, and legal action will follow." As guards stepped forward, Anita screamed, "No, this isn't happening." "Oh, it's happening." Madame Nana's voice cut through the air. She stepped forward, no longer in a cleaner's clothes, but in a stunning traditional dress. Strong, regal. Gasps filled the room again. "Mama Nana?" someone whispered. "The cleaner." Madame Nana smiled. "No, the owner." Anita's jaw dropped, her knees buckled, everything around her crumbled. And Wendy, humble, quiet, kind Wendy, stood silently as the truth rose like a mountain behind her. She had been tested, she had been hunted, but she never broke. The office was never the same after that day. Anita was gone, dragged out, in disgrace, screaming that she had been set up. No one believed her, no one even pitied her. The mask had fallen, and all that remained was the bitterness of a woman who had tried to burn someone else's light, only to drown in her own darkness. Wendy, however, didn't feel victorious. She wasn't the kind of person who found joy in someone else's fall. All she felt was relief, that the nightmare had ended, that her name had been cleared. But the spotlight, she didn't want it, and yet it followed her. Staff, who once ignored her, now greeted her with wide smiles and small gifts. Co-workers who used to mock her now stood when she entered a room. Even Linda, who once laughed at her food and her friendship with the cleaner, now treated her like royalty. But Wendy remained the same. She still brought her simple jollof rice in plastic bowls. She still helped the janitor stack boxes when no one was watching. She still smiled and said thank you to the security guard each morning. And that's what made Kwame fall for her. Not overnight, not with flashy confessions or grand speeches. It was in the little things. The way she listened when he spoke. The way she didn't pretend to be impressed by his money. The way she still called his mother Mama with warmth and no fear. One evening, weeks after the storm had passed, Madame Nana called Wendy to her home. It wasn't the first time. They now shared meals like family, laughed like old friends. But tonight, it felt different. Wendy noticed the candles first, soft, glowing. The table was already set, the food steaming. Groundnut soup, fried plantain, grilled chicken. "Mama," Wendy said, smiling as she entered. "You cooked too much again." Madame Nana only chuckled. "Tonight is special." She led Wendy to the living room where Kwame stood waiting. Wendy paused. "Is something wrong?" Kwame stepped forward slowly. "No," he said softly. "But something is finally right." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Wendy's breath caught. "Before you say anything," Kwame began, his voice calm but thick with emotion, "I want you to know I'm not offering this because of what happened. Not because you were kind to my mother. Not because you survived what others wouldn't." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no grand shine. Just a thin band of warmth and quiet meaning. "I'm asking," he continued, "because you are the strongest, most genuine woman I've ever met. You changed my mother's heart. You opened mine. And if you'll have me, I want to build a life with you." Wendy stood frozen. "Mama," she whispered. Madame Nana wiped a tear from her eye. "My daughter," she said gently, "I prayed for a woman like you, and God sent you before my son ever returned." Tears slipped from Wendy's eyes. She had spent her life thinking she wasn't enough, that kindness wouldn't survive in a world that rewarded cruelty. And yet, here she was, standing at the center of a story she never asked to be part of. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll marry you." Months passed. The wedding was not a royal parade, but a celebration of soul. Dignity, tradition, and love filled every corner of the room. Staff, cleaners, executives, neighbors, all were treated equally, because that's how Wendy wanted it. She wore a modest Kente gown and walked down the aisle with Madame Nana beside her, not in a cleaner's wrapper, but in full regalia as the matriarch she truly was. Kwame took her hand, and before all they vowed not just love, but honesty, patience, and humility. And as they kissed, the same office women who once laughed behind Wendy's back now clapped with real joy. Because deep down, even they had been changed by the journey. From broomsticks to boardrooms, from mock to married, from ordinary to unforgettable, Wendy became not just the wife of a CEO, but a symbol, a reminder that kindness isn't weakness, that dignity doesn't wear designer, and that sometimes the real queen scrubs the floor first, just to see who will bow before her heart, not her crown.